What up, everybody? It's the Built Different Podcast, Sean and Ricky. Today we wanted to talk about the NBA. It's kind of the resurgence now of the young talent in the NBA and essentially what would you say changing of the guard now from some of the legendary players, Steph and LeBron and uh, you know uh, even the Kawhis and so forth to the guys that are in the Western Conference Finals and the Eastern Conference Finals now. Sean, you and I think both of us aren't probably the most avid NBA watchers, but has it been kind of impressive to you now that, the names I mentioned, the Stephs, the LeBron, some of the other older generation, the KDs, they're not in the mix now, and you have this new pool of talent that's kind of being talked about now in the conference finals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of is, um, there's always been two different strategies of like, do you want to, build your team with homegrown kind of young talent and then like develop it into, having a team of like relatively young superstars, or do you want to be the team that goes out and tries to buy this already established talent that, has been around for a while and in the NBA over the past, let's say, um, 10 years, it's definitely been more of uh, that kind of like going out, not necessarily buying, but like, pairing superstars that you developed with, some other superstar, whether it was KD joining the Warriors or, LeBron and Anthony Davis teaming up in LA, or,
Mm-hmm.
the Heat making their big three, that a while back. So, and I think like you're starting to see more of this kind of like, okay, no, let's get homegrown talent and continue to develop young guys. You're seeing it with Milwaukee a few years ago did a great job of developing their own guys, Giannis, Chris Middleton,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting maybe an older guy or two as like role players. I think that's kind of been the strategy that's been working. Same thing with, Denver, who won it last year. They developed most of those guys in-house. And then,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, and I think, you're seeing that with the four teams that are in it here. I mean, other than, a few guys, Kyrie, coming from a few teams, Pascal Siakam from a few teams,
Mm-hmm.
like the the Boston Celtics are primarily developed, they're at least their two stars, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, have been Celtics pretty much their whole career. And then
Mm-hmm.
um, you look at, uh, I mean, Luka with the Mavericks obviously has been there his whole career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other team, why am I forgetting the other team? There's in Indiana, you got Tyrese Halliburton.
Oh no, Minnesota definitely with
Minnesota, yeah.
Edwards,
Anthony Edwards, yeah, that
Towns.
was the team I was missing. Anthony Edwards, Cat, they've all been there. Like, yeah, they got a few guys. Like, I think Rudy Gobert has
Gobert.
come from a few
Hmm.
places, but when you look at the star player from each of these teams, Halliburton, Edwards, Tatum, and Luka, those are all homegrown guys who've been surrounded by talent. And it seems to be working well.
Yeah, to me, you know my stance on it. I prefer the NBA. Well, really any sport, like even football, where you have the homegrown talent. The guy that grew up is the native son of that city of that team. Kind of leading that team. And then, yeah, you have the ancillary pieces that you add around him. Every team needs the veteran presence, and you bring in different guys to fill out the roster. But I don't know. To me, it's a much more, even with Denver winning last year, a much more rewarding kind of feeling than kind of the guy that jumped on a team and superstars teaming up. Like you have Phoenix and you know, yeah, they had Booker there, but they added Beal and they added KD, and I'm hoping it's a changing of the way things are done, and building through the draft. Because you and I, we love the draft. Like NFL draft, nothing touches that, but NBA draft and seeing the building of a team and what a GM's thinking and how they put the pieces together, the magic. another team like that's very similar that I think is gonna in the future go somewhere because I mean, they've been in the draft for how many damn years? They got to get it right at some point. So looks like they're on the right track finally. They could use a veteran presence on that team, to be honest. But yeah, the teams that are left, I think it just makes it more exciting. It's nice to have some variety. For years, it was the Heat, the Cavaliers, Celtics, the old school Celtics, KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, um, Warriors every year. And now, we have some parity now. And Denver did their thing last year, homegrown team, Joker and Murray, and some pieces around them. But yeah, now these teams, I mean, it's to crown a new champion. You know what I mean? Is I think going to be a really fun. Even though I don't really watch the NBA like that too much anymore, but I think it's just nice to have that new blood in there, some new storylines, some new people to follow, and my hope is that we're transitioning like because I think we've held on a lot to these legends, the LeBrons, the KDs, the Stephs for quite a while now, and they've been had a kind of stranglehold on the league, but now I think we're starting to finally see some of the young talent shine through and become that next generation of players that we can follow that are talked about. I think one thing that needs to be done though is and this is why I think these cable networks are having a lot of issues these days. Is like they just keep highlighting the LeBrons, the KDs, the Stephs, and the same thing with the specific teams and things like that. It's time to branch out and start talking. I don't care if the team's a small market team. If they got talent, they got good young pieces. They're exciting to watch. Talk about them. Like we don't have to keep focusing on these old teams and older players that, phenomenal and still phenomenal to this day. But start highlighting the young talent. Let's start building the future. Let's start talking about the future. Like let's look forward. Like stop looking backwards.
And yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And you look too at like, I think some of these really, older star players, if they were to transition into more of a, you know, not backup, but like a secondary role where they're not the lead guy, like that would give them a lot more chances to win. Like you saw Ray Allen in his later years. I mean, he was a star for many years, and then
Hmm.
later in his career, he knew his role was not going to be, hey, like I'm going to be this star player. I'm going to, take over. His role was to come off the bench and provide some scoring, things like that. And he won a championship with the Heat because that like he fit perfectly to what they needed at the time. And you see a lot of
Hmm.
these like star players that just don't feel like they're transitioning to a secondary role. They want to still be the guy, and it's a little bit too long. And then like I think too, some of these big blockbuster trades have really, really screwed some teams. Like every team that's made this big blockbuster trade, like, oh, the Suns traded for Bradley Beal, they got knocked
Hmm.
out. The Bucks got Damian Lillard. Oh my God, they're going to go crazy. They got knocked out. It's like these teams that are doing these blockbuster deals to get this to get this third superstar are the
Harden
one
on the Clippers.
Harden on the clip. Yeah, all these teams that are doing these blockbuster deals to get these superstars are the ones that are falling short because they have to give up so many depth players, that guys that can come in and provide those
Hmm.
extra minutes, and all of a sudden your team becomes super thin, and you now need this superstar to be a superstar all the time. And like, injuries happen, other things happen that all of a sudden you lose that superstar. That superstar is not performing at the level they're supposed to, and okay, you're done. You're gonna lose because you're relying everything on one player as opposed to the three or four, five, younger guys you had to give up to get that player.
Yeah, no, it's the economics of the sport now because these max contracts are no joke. You know what I mean? You can do what maybe two, three max contracts, and then the rest of the roster you kind of got to thin it out a little bit. With guys making maybe a little bit less. So you have like the Lakers. Remember, the Lakers were stacked with young talent, when LeBron first got there. But to get AD on the team, they had to cut all of those guys and to kind of bring in some lesser pieces. And to be honest, they picked up some good pieces during the offseason, but it's again, the star player being LeBron, and then AD almost as co-pilot, it it kind of hampers the rest of the team's development, and I don't know. It's just I think that this playoff has shown that maybe things are changing, and the times are changing, and we're starting to transition from those legendary players into like this next generation and building new legendary players with potential, and John Morant being another one of them. He just gotta get his shit together and get his head out of his ass. But
I
yeah,
mean,
John Morant, I think he's up there with the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders, and obviously Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana, and Tatum, and you know Luca, and Ant Man. Ant Man might have next altogether. I don't know. He might be that guy. I don't know. But somebody has to. I think somebody has to step up and take the reins as the face of the league. I just don't know which one of them it is. Um, you're just looking like Joker. I mean, it could still be Joker. He just had got out a little earlier than probably wanted to this year. But yeah, there needs to be a face, a symbol. You know what I mean? Feel in many regards, people still see LeBron as the face, but at some point it has to transition, and the baton has to be handed off to somebody. One of these young players need to take it and run with it.
yeah, I mean, you think about like what someone like if you were to say like a Steph Curry, if he, kind of took more of that backseat role and like was kind of an off the bench guy or like even like a, someone who's not playing that superstar role, he'd be unreal. Like he could help a team like if he joined like something like, one of these teams that's still in it or something as like a veteran shooter, they those teams would be unstoppable, in my opinion.
Yeah, on his team, he can't really take a backseat to anybody right now. Unfortunately, I don't think they have any. I don't think they have anybody
They're
talented enough for him to take a backseat.
they're
But
too old.
when K, yeah, they're an older team. I think when KD was there though, like, and he didn't have to be plan A all the time. I think that's what allowed them to flourish. I think they were. I mean, they beat the Cavaliers obviously in that first series without KD, but yeah, once he came in, it was like you know Steph could kind of have because Steph being a shooter, there's and he's mostly on, but a shooter is gonna be have their off nights. You know, what I mean, there's streakiness in them, but um, yeah, he needs that other guy when that streakiness happens to, because it used to be Clay, during that last championship, but Clay's, I think the age and the injury, that injuries he's compiled over the years has caught up with him. But yeah, unfortunately, Steph couldn't take a back seat. So that's the other side of it too. Is I love the guy. I don't know. I kind of love the situation where guys and WNBA girls stay with their team, and they never they're that player forever on that team. You know what I mean? I don't know if I could see Steph on another team. I don't know. He's like Golden State, Golden Boy, Golden State.
To me, I think like I get what you're saying from like a legacy perspective. Like, it's cool to like people are always going to think of Larry Bird on the Celtics, right?
Larry Bird, yeah.
People are always like, even though Jordan did end up going somewhere else, they're always going to think of Jordan as a Bull. No one's like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan, the Wizard. It's like, no, he was a wizard, but no one's going to remember him like that. So I think if you're Steph, even if he were to leave and go somewhere else, he's always going to be remembered for his time in Golden State. But the impact that he could have for another team
Hmm.
being, more of this secondary player as opposed to like the star needs to carry the team, needs to shoot 15 threes a game and make, 10 of them. Like, I just don't think he has enough of that left and enough of the pieces around him in Golden State to make that work. And I think if you're him and you care more about championships and like longevity and continuing to put up like numbers. Like if you just care about the stats, then like okay, stay where you are and keep shooting all the time. Sure. But if you care about like the rings and stuff, which I know you and I both value, I think that's the way to get more rings. I don't think he's winning any more rings with the team they have in Golden State right now.
No. I mean, imagine like we mentioned the Magic. Imagine Steph as a shooter on the Magic, or I mean, there's a number of teams that, man, because I mean, the thing with Steph though is he's still put up 30, 40 points. You know, he still is. You know, is he what he was a few years ago? No. Is he? You know, is he like really like? You know, because you look at Clay, look at him. Clay's drastically had a drastic drop. You know, he'll drop a good game every now and then, but then he has some really streaks of bad nights. But Steph is still consistently good in my opinion. Yeah, imagine him on a young team as that guy, you know.
I'd love to see
Um,
him with like, when talking about young guys, Victor Wembanyama, you know, with the
oh yeah,
with the Spurs, having someone that's like that dominant in just a monster in the paint and stuff, and then the ability to dish it out to someone like Steph, that's that's lethal.
yeah, Wembanyama. That's another guy that's got next. Obviously, like that's the one that we didn't mention because it finally feels like there's some young talent around now. It's just now, even looking at, I don't know if you've looked at any of the mock drafts now though, and I honestly don't recognize any of the guys on the mock drafts. Like my hope is that these guys still can kind of come in and be good players and be, the next all stars, superstars, first team NBA. But I really don't know because I'm like looking at the pieces that can be added around Wembanyama, and I forget. I think they're either fourth or fifth. They have the fourth or fifth pick in the draft, and like which one of these guys can be a partner or like a facilitator on that team or like a good help fill out that roster or help fill out that starting lineup and be no.
Yeah, and I mean that's why going back, it's like these teams, even though a lot of them have been constructed with, those young guys and like a lot of that young talent, I
Hmm.
still think the veteran presence is like an important piece. And like you see that with like Kyrie being a veteran presence in Dallas, generally,
Hmm.
you know. Um, you've got veteran presence in Boston. Al Horford's been around for like 100 years. Um,
Yeah.
and then on like on the Pacers, you have Pascal Siakam is 30. TJ McConnell is 32. So you've got some older veteran guys there too. So I think it's important to have that veteran presence, especially with the young talent. Um, but the young talent is still, I think, what you build your team around, right? Like, I think the
Hmm.
days of trying to build your team with all veterans is is done. I don't think people are doing it anymore, or the people that aren't doing it are not having success with it. So,
No, I agree. I agree. It's just also too the talent coming out of college, and now it looks like Europe even more so. It just has to fit the bill. You know what I mean? Like you don't want it to be because for a little while there, I think during the time when it was more like you're just trying to get veteran pieces together to make a super team or a competitive team. I don't think the draft was really weak at that point. There wasn't really much coming into the league. And these past few drafts, there's been a couple of guys that came in. And the thing is, as well, it seems to take a couple of years for a lot of these guys to kind of develop and be strong enough players to carry their teams. You even look at Sacramento. I mean, look, they're another young team that it took a little while for them to kind of get their bearings and to really put their imprint on their team and the league. So that's the other side of it is you got to give these guys some time as well, more so than I feel like for a while in these drafts we were getting ready-made superstars right off the bat, you know,
yeah,
even out of high school.
I mean, like Anthony Edwards, like yes, he was a number one pick, but he was a number one pick in 2020. It's been 4 years now. obviously he's now living up to the reputation of a number one pick, but 2 years ago, not saying that he was ever bad, but was he a superstar from the very, first time he stepped on the court? Not really.
Hmm.
Not something that you like heard about all the time at least. So, it's interesting to see that. And yeah, I think as far as the NBA mock draft, I just looked at it and I think what's also kind of weird is, and this could be playing into why we haven't heard of some of these people. You now have
European,
what?
the Europeans.
The Europeans, that's part of it. And also, you've got these high school players that are now skipping college and going
Yeah.
straight to the G League, or I think it's the
Hmm.
G League, yeah. So, um, you have three different pipelines essentially to get to the NBA. You can play in college, you can uh, go the G League route, or you can go overseas. And so it's like,
Hmm.
it's not surprising to me that some of these people aren't, as talked about as it was in the past, where it was like you saw them in college, you saw them in March Madness, like obviously guys like Zion, Anthony Edwards, those guys were, you know, playing in March Madness. They were, showing out on what is considered to be probably the biggest stage in college basketball. Um,
Hmm.
I don't even know how you would watch a G League game. I don't know where you find those. So, um,
I don't either. Um, I think NBA TV might show some of them, and then I think maybe on NBA's website. I don't know.
So it's like, other than like, obviously when the draft comes up, these names, start being talked about more and things like that. But other than that, it's like, I don't even know how these guys are getting found I mean, obviously the scouts are going there, but as fans and people that are just watching, it's like, um, it's a lot more difficult to pinpoint, oh, this is going to be the guy, unless there's someone who obviously was crazy, like a Wembanyama. He, he's been talked about for years as being like the next, like the up and coming guy. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, that I know we had talked about it during the tournament, and I was like so happy with Edie, and also I forget the guy's name from Connecticut, the 7-2 center. I was like, man, and then even the guy from NC State, which I don't know if you noticed, he lost like 45 pounds. He's like kind of thin now.
oh, that guy, I know who you're talking about.
NC State, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah, he's like not a big bulky guy too much anymore. But yeah, I was like, man, I was enthralled with like the post play because I love the days of the big man in the middle, kind of not really branching out to the 3 point line, but post up and kick out, post up moves in the middle of the paint. But surprisingly, Edie, I don't know if you've seen the mocks, they have him like in the low 20s.
Yeah, I think it's something they just don't think his game's going to translate. I mean, the
Yeah,
NBA
exactly.
is very different from college basketball, so they're looking for
Hmm.
specific things. Like, that's why like some of the guys who, come into the NBA, like they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy got drafted out of this school." And I'm like number one overall pick, and like his team didn't even make the March Madness. I'm like, how can you be a number one overall pick in a sport with five people on the court, and you can't even like will your team to the
Yeah.
to the best 64 teams in the country,
Hmm.
But it happens, and it's like sometimes they draft guys based on their height, based on like things that you can't teach them. Um,
Yeah.
so that definitely plays a factor as well.
What I was seeing with Edie is and I heard he did better than expected was the shooting. That's like it's a must for the big man now. You can't just be a space eater or a shot blocker. You got to be able to go out to that 3 point line and knock down some threes. You know what I mean? You got to be mobile. You got to be able to run up and down the court. But yeah, I mean, I still have hope for Edie that he's a successful player in the NBA, and I don't know. I think the big guys just because of the way the game is played now, it's just they don't get the shine that they probably deserve, or their games they can't really play an effective game. Because Edie, I mean, how effective was Edie? Like he was unstoppable. You know what I mean? I don't, why can't he be an unstoppable player in the NBA? You know,
I mean,
especially with size advantage he has.
I mean, I will say that I think big men, while they may not be the most, electric people to watch in the NBA, they have gotten their flowers. I mean, Jokic, Embiid both won MVPs.
Yeah.
So, if you think about the MVP over the last 3, 4 years, it's been won by a big man. I think at least two, if not three of those years. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Sure.
but obviously there's still like I think the whole league as a whole over the past I don't know what 10 years or whatever has become so much of a shooting. You got to shoot the three, got to shoot the three. So it's just kind of the way that the game is shifted.
Yeah, and going back to young talent, the teams. Let's go to your pick. Like who out of the series that are left, and then who do you think will win the finals? Like out of these two series, who are you picking to make it to the NBA finals, and then who do you think is going to win the NBA finals?
From the East, I mean, at the time of recording this, the first games of the series have happened, so we do kind of have a little bit of insight as to what's going on. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that the Pacers blew that game against the Celtics in Game 1, I feel like that's going to be tough to overcome. Like that's just not how you want that game to end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I would pick the Celtics to win that series. In the West, we've got Minnesota and Dallas. Uh, I think it could go either way. I kind of like Dallas. I think, you know, something about I know. I mean, obviously it's been successful with Minnesota this year with the kind of they call them like the Twin Towers with Rudy Gobert
Yeah.
and Cat. But I don't know. I think something about it. I just feel like Dallas. I mean, Luka's been unreal. And I think they just have a more uh like history, I guess, of success in the playoffs and stuff. And I think that can kind of allow them to carry through a little bit. Um, so out of those two teams, I mean, I think the Celtics should win it because I think they're the better team, but they seem to not been able to like finish out those games. So
Yeah.
I kind of think that Dallas pulls it out. I don't know. I have a weird feeling that Dallas is gonna like kind of sneak in there and steal it from them.
And then finals. So you have Dallas, you have
I have Dallas and
Boston.
Boston. I have Dallas sneaking it away in the finals.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I was still focused on the Western Conference final.
How about you?
So Dallas wins the championship. For me, I don't know. That like you said, Dallas and Minnesota. That's kind of a toss up. I think they're going to go back and forth. I see that going 7 games. Um, I don't know. Something I kind of feel in some regards the way you do about Luca and Kyrie pulling it out. Just they've. I think they've both been clutch in their careers. Kyrie's had the experience in the finals already. Kyrie's been played big games already. Luca has more playoff experience than the stars on the Wolves. But I don't know something. I don't know. I think I got to go with Dallas as well. I've been saying Minnesota, but Minnesota wouldn't surprise me either because they seem to be able to tough it out. Coming back down from 20 against the past champions, last year's champions, like that says a lot. They have a lot of toughness, a lot of grit. Anthony Edwards has to play better. Cat has to be on stepping on the gas every game. That bench has to show up. Um, I think Boston. I think Boston's going to pull it out. I think Indiana. I love Indiana's progress and that they came out of nowhere because nobody was expecting them to get this far at the start of the season. But I think their time is not now. I think Boston's time is now, and I think Dallas and Boston face off, and I think Boston finally gets over the hump. But they need consistency. Tatum and Brown can't be having off games. There's games where they just disappear. They can't do that because Luca. is most likely not going to disappear in any of the games. You know what I mean? So Boston, I think Boston pulls it out, but I'm just happy to see a finals with young talent, new guys, new storylines. So that's what I'm excited about. So either way, I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to, just the media in general, just, kind of like finally taking the next step and being like, okay, let's talk about this other team, whether it's any of these other teams. I mean, let's give these guys who are making it this far. Like, I don't like this all the talk about, oh, where's so and so gonna go next year? Like, where's LeBron gonna go? Where, is someone gonna draft his son and then he'll go there? Like, it's like let's focus on the teams that are actually doing well. And if, when when it's time, then we'll talk about the off season and talk about where these, all-time greats are gonna play next and things like that.
Coaches, what coach is going to coach where? Yeah, I don't have the faith in the media to not do that. I think we saw it last year. Denver won the championship. We weren't talking about Denver, you know. Even now, where you turn on you see highlights from these shows, they're not talking as much. They'll lead the segment with the Lakers and LeBron and where's he going to go and what coach is he going to have versus the game that happened the night before. So I don't really have faith in the media that they're gonna talk about these guys and try to. That's the problem with the game is that they're not doing those things. So I don't know. Fingers crossed. Either way, it's nice to have some new blood in the conference finals and the championship. So hats off to those guys, and we'll see if our predictions come ring true at the end of the day. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys for joining us again. In the subject line, in the put the teams that you think are going to make it and who you think is going to win the finals. We know there's a couple people watching here and there, so just put some comments in the comment section. I don't want to be the only person liking it every week, but that speaks to Extropian and what we're doing. Though it's like we're a company that has a product that works for any sport, for any athlete, and that's what we talk about all of these different sports and different facets of sport, the business of sport, because that's what we're engaged with, and we're out to help a variety of different athletes in all sports because we have a kind of platform that's just incredible for everybody and anybody trying to be the best version of themselves. So, with that being said, this topic was about NBA, and next week we'll be delving into potentially another sport or Extropian itself. But we thank you guys for your viewership and listening. And if you're watching in the back from the future because we've made it and you're using our product, this were our predictions for the 2024 NBA Finals. So with that being said, you guys have a great weekend and peace out.
Yeah.